What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Sunshine State Rundown. Of course, I'm your host again, JJ Metz, and this is a daily podcast on the weekdays. Obviously, we're gonna take the weekends off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but Monday through Thursday, every single day. At least for now, we may expand it, so to speak, more come the season. We're still in the dog days of July. Of July and August, which are considered the dog days of the only professional sport going on, which is the MLB. So it's good that at least something other than baseball is coming around, and that's no disrespect to baseball. However, when you're playing 9 innings every single day, can very much get a little bit, don't want to say tiring, so to speak, but can definitely get a bit um, long. The days that every game. Now we actually have some football, which is almost up. Some basketball. College football starts this Saturday, and we have our own Florida team, the Florida State Seminoles, which we will be talking about tomorrow. But today is UF Day, and UF, tough schedule. Oh, they have a tough schedule, and they have been not meeting expectations. A lot like Miami, but they are worse. They have been worse the last few years. Now, a few years ago, they had Kyle Pitts, Kyle Trask, and made it to the SEC championship game. But since Billy Napier arrived in 2021, no, 22, sorry, they've had a losing record both years. They made a bowl game once in the 2022 season, but they're 11-13 in their 2 seasons. That's not up to expectation. So year three, he's definitely on the hot seat. This is different than Cristobal, because Cristobal's recruiting has been up there, and Cristobal is expected to be a top two team in the ACC this year. That's not the same with Florida. And Florida's got a tough schedule. So they're in a weird point. But we're going to have a very special guest. Come on. He's going to talk about Florida, going to talk about Billy Napier, the team itself. But I want to go over Graham Mertz, the quarterback. I want to give you guys a little insight before we meet him, the main position, quarterback. Graham Mertz, he's returning for the Gators. He threw for under 3,000 yards last season, which is disappointing. A lot of people think this is bad, but this is what I label like players, and I don't think this is a bad thing to have this label. It just means that this is the type of player you are. He is a game manager, and game manager does not at all mean he's bad. No, game manager means he's not going to make the huge plays, but again, he's not going to make costly interceptions. 3 interceptions last year to 20 touchdowns. Excellent rate. He had one of the highest QBRs in the country, top 40 at just under 70. 72% or near 72.9 completion percentage. That's awesome. So Graham Mertz is accurate. He's a game manager quarterback. But I think with the schedule now, he's going to have to take the next step for Florida to get where they want to be. So we are going to see our special guest come on very shortly, but I want to talk about the rest of the team of Florida other than Graham Mertz. So Florida, their schedule is the toughest in probably all. Yeah, I think it's the toughest schedule in college. And I'll tell you. But I want to talk about the rest of the roster. So you have Montrell Johnson, someone that I think is a great running back. He's going to run it down your throat. He can pick up the first down yardages when needed to. He's a good running back. He's not great like what we saw yesterday with talking to Alex Dono with the Miami running back, who are the best in the country. But Montrell Johnson, he's a good running back. He rushed for over 800 yards last year. He had 5 touchdowns, and the best part about it is he averaged over 5 yards a carry, which is always a positive. Wide receiver room, it's not a stacked wide receiver room. You have Eugene Wilson and Elijah Badger. But other than that, it's not anything special. On the offensive line, I'm looking at Jake Slaughter, inside offensive lineman, someone who's big and can block. But that's pretty much where I'm looking at. This team also has really good cornerbacks, obviously Cormani McLean going, to Colorado, not working out, but he's a top 10 player when he was out of high school 2 years ago or last year. He's going to be good. Jason Marshall going to be the main guy I'm looking at. So Florida has a good team. They have a good defense, but nothing stands out to me. They don't have anything to take it to the next level. And with this schedule, will that work? I don't know. But we're going to find out. Our special guest is coming on right now. You are watching the Sunshine State Sports Rundown. Sunshine State Sports Rundown, a daily podcast on Florida teams. Welcome back to the Sunshine State Sports Rundown. We are here with a special guest who covers the Florida Gators for the Gators Illustrate, Florida Illustrate, Cam Parker. Cam, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Cam, obviously you were at fall camp, the Gators fall camp, where you got to see firsthand the different position groups practicing during fall camp. So, can you talk about who really stood out to you while you were at fall camp? And what position groups are you very excited to see come week 1 versus Miami based on your experience at fall camp?
Yeah, so to start, the big thing about this team in comparison to the last couple of years under Billy Napier has been, this is a team with a lot of depth that they just haven't had at most of their positions. Especially, just starting off with the quarterback room, you obviously have Graham Mertz, who's one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC last year. Very efficient, didn't turn the ball over too much, completed nearly 73% of his passes, which broke a school record, if I'm not mistaken. And then obviously you have the 5-star freshman and DJ Lagway coming in, and the expectation is he's going to see the field right away. So you have also a good insurance policy behind Mertz if something happens to him, like something last year when he broke his collarbone. And then I think the other one is, just looking at the depth around the room, the defensive line especially. They finally have a 3-deep line that they just haven't had. They'll have a fresh rotation, both outside and inside. Linebackers, too. You look at, they have some talented freshmen in Aaron Childs and Miles Graham, 2 blue chip guys. And then a transfer in Grayson Pup Howard from South Carolina, where those guys can complement Shamar James pretty well. Shamar James being the star linebacker of the room. And it's big because they just haven't had that depth over the last couple of years. It cost them late in games. There are so many games over the last 2 years where if Florida just had one more drive go their way, either offensively or defensively, they win that game. And all of a sudden, you're not talking about back-to-back losing seasons under Billy Napier. You're talking about back-to-back 8 wins or 9-win seasons. And now this year, that gets you into the playoffs. So, it's just really just depth as a whole on this team. You look at every single position, and not to just go through and name all of them, but you could go through every single one, and there's some good depth. Still some questions just because of some of the position groups. There's just some young guys who will have to step in right away, but they have bodies in each room that they just haven't had before, and that's a big thing.
Yeah, and Cam, I love the optimism there. A couple plays away from 8 wins. That's something we don't hear from most Florida fans. They're mostly very upset with how the team's production has been the last 2 years with Billy Napier being the head guy. But you mentioned the quarterbacks. Obviously, we expect Graham Mertz to be the guy on week 1, but you mentioned that DJ Lagway could see the 5-star freshman, could see some action, could see some game time starting versus Miami, first game of the season. Can you talk about what you think his role is going to be on the team, and how is he going to come on? Is he going to be a scrambler type quarterback, or do you think they're going to, go split some of the snaps?
Well, he's going to see the field right away. DJ Lagway, he came in this year under the expectation that Graham Mertz would start. There wasn't a competition in the quarterback room. It was always going to be Graham Mertz as the starter and then Lagway as the backup. It's very reminiscent. In 2006, Florida had two quarterbacks, and Chris Leak, who was the veteran guy. He wasn't super spectacular quarterback the same way that Graham Mertz isn't necessarily a super spectacular quarterback, but a good leader that the offense rallies around. And then you have a five-star true freshman. In 2006, that was Tim Tebow. In 2024, that's DJ Lagway. So it's very similar in that regard. They'll have certain packages for Lagway. I know in the scrimmages, they've let him throw the ball a little bit. He's turned it loose and thrown some deep passes too. So it's not just going to be he comes in and runs the ball. They'll have certain sets, pretty much just playing it safe and easing him into it. They want to make sure that when he's in, he's playing as much mistake-free football as he possibly can. The scrimmages were very hit or miss for him. His first scrimmage, he had 2 touchdown passes to another true freshman, which is pretty good. This past scrimmage, he did okay. Wasn't, anything spectacular. There were some times where they wanted him to stay in the pocket and he took off and ran. Other times where he should have taken off and ran or he forced the ball in. And that's going to happen with a true freshman. But overall, camp was good for both quarterbacks. The idea going into the season is that Lagway would see the field. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like just yet. But he'll be in early and often, and I expect it's not just going to be a wildcat formation where they have him run the ball for 2 yards to get a first down. He'll see a set of plays. They'll ease him in, give him some good throws, easy throws, and easy plays to work with. And then Graham Mertz will be the starter 90% of the time. He'll be the guy leading this offense in his final year. But again, you can't keep a guy like DJ Lagway on the bench, especially with a 5-star. You just, in this day and age in college football, you can't do that. So he'll see the field. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like just yet, but the idea that he's just coming in to run the ball that's not what's going to happen. He's going to throw it some too this year.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned that Graham Mertz was going to be a starter. There was no QB competition. Lagway came in knowing that Graham Mertz would be the starter. But something about Graham Mertz is, he's a really good quarterback, but he's kind of been a game manager, last season for the Gators. He doesn't do anything special. He threw for under 3,000 yards. Yes, the 20 touchdowns are good to 3 interceptions. That's something good. And his QBR is high too, but he doesn't make the big special plays, but he doesn't make mistakes, which can also be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. And I view it more of a bad thing with Florida's schedule this year. You have 8 ranked teams, and you can't just have a game manager. If you expect to win 8 or 9, maybe 10 games this season with 8 ranked teams out of 12, which is a very tough schedule. So, what do you think Graham Mertz has to do this season to take his game to the next level? Do you think they could scrape by, meet expectations, make it to a good bowl game if Graham Mertz just plays how he did last season, being that game manager type quarterback, throwing 20 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions with no mistakes? Obviously, the injury is something that took into account last season. However, is that going to get Florida to a good season, or do you think he has to do something more?
Well, the big thing that they've taken initiative with, going back to spring, was just creating more explosive plays, taking more shots down the field. They didn't do that a lot last year. In the back half of the season, especially at the South Carolina game, there was a turning point where they started to throw it deep. Mertz started taking more risks, but even then, it was very rare that you saw them throw a ball past the first down marker. And even if they did, it usually was a quick pass to either Ricky Pearsall or Eugene Wilson, and he did the rest. So this offseason has been a lot about Graham Mertz easing in. Last year, just going back to there, Graham Mertz eased into the offense. It was a new system. He'd come off of a lackluster career at Wisconsin. So they come in, they ease him in, and they have him make the easy throws, the efficient throws to get him comfortable. Now that he's comfortable, he has the experience of last year behind him. It's about taking more risks, taking more shots down the field, throwing the ball in maybe tighter coverage just because you have the opportunity to make a play. And that's something that he has full on taken advantage of. He's practicing that. They did it in the spring game a little bit. They've done it in the 2 fall scrimmages. It's been very hit or miss because it's a big transition going from you know, just efficient, quick passes, get it to your guy and go, versus actually making the play as the quarterback, taking shots down the field, making the high level throws that are really tough to make. But I think Mertz has done pretty well so far with answering that. The other thing too is the big thing with Mertz was a big reason why they were able to win 5 games last year, because he did the mistake-free football. He gave the offense chances to score points. The big thing was the defense was just atrocious last year. They didn't tackle well. They only got 3 interceptions total on the year. They didn't sack the quarterback too much, and when they did, it was Princely Umanmielen, who's now gone. So the defense is the big question mark. I'm not too worried about the offense this year. The main thing is the offensive line. They had a lot of struggles last year. They replaced a lot of guys. The right side of the offensive line has been very hit or miss in the scrimmages, from what we've been told, because we can't watch the scrimmages. We have sources who tell us what's going on, and so the right side of the line is still a work in progress. They've got some other guys that they could plug in there and work out. But overall, that's been a big focal point of the offense, is taking more shots down the field, making those explosive plays. Because as you said, playing safe and easy, it's going to get you points, but it may not get you the win that you need at the end of the day. But I think they're doing what they need to do. They have a good dynamic offense with Billy Napier. He's kind of his own OC, but he promoted the tight ends coach Russ Callaway to co-OC. He has a larger voice in the offense. He was a stellar offensive coordinator at the FCS level, put up crazy numbers with Samford. He's expected to help take control of that offense and have them throw it more down the field, take chances, be more risky, but also keep that efficiency at the same time. And so overall, been a big transitional offseason for them. But I think that they're doing what they need to do to answer what went wrong last year offensively. And that was just the lack of explosive plays, inconsistency on the offensive line. Again, they have great receivers too to help out with that. They finally have speed in the room. Eugene Wilson obviously is at the forefront of that. Khalil Jackson is the other guy on the outside. He's been known for making catches in contested coverage down the field. They added a couple transfers in Chimere Dike, he's literally Graham Mertz's best friend. They were teammates at Wisconsin. They play golf together. That's his guy. And then they add another guy in Elijah Badger from Arizona State, who's one of the top transfer portal receivers once he left Arizona State. So they have the weapons to go down the field. Mertz just has maybe not the greatest arm strength, but I think that he has the touch to where he can make some of those throws if he's given the time. We'll just have to see how the offensive line does, because they weren't great last year. They revamped it with a bunch of new guys, but we'll just have to see exactly how those new guys do.
Yeah, and Cam, I do agree with what you said about Graham Mertz. Part of the 5 games they won last year, he had to not make the mistakes to do it. But when you look back at the Florida teams in the recent years that have been good, you've had Kyle Trask at quarterback, and I wouldn't say that the defense was good at that time when he was quarterback. They were able in the 2020 season win 8 games, 2019 win 11 games. So you need a quarterback who can also make deep plays, and I think that's great that Florida is practicing that and trying to incorporate deep and explosive plays next season to maybe make the big plays instead of just having a game manager quarterback. Now you mentioned all the weapons, obviously the wide receiver room, Eugene Wilson, Chimere Dike, as you mentioned, and it's also a good running back room. You have Montrell Johnson, who will be leading that running back room along with uh Treyon Webb. So definitely, you have weapons on the offensive side of the ball. And Florida has had talent and weapons the last 3 seasons. There's no question Billy Napier knows how to recruit. However, the question is, how can he produce that in games? He's 11-13 in his 2 seasons, which is under expectations. So, Cam, Billy Napier entering year 3 is on the hot seat. Are you confident that he can utilize his talent to start winning football games instead of just gathering talent? It's very similar to the University of Miami and Mario Cristobal situation, where there's no question that they can get talent. However, it's just producing that talent, and Napier hasn't been able to figure that out. So, what's your confidence level going into this season with the Gators.
Well, based off of what Napier's at least told us in press conferences, at least kind of speaking for him, this is the most confident that he's felt in any of his three teams that he's had. This one being the third team, obviously. Again, I mentioned earlier the depth that they have. They haven't had that in the past 2 years. The cohesiveness has been a big thing. They feel like it's an actual united team, not just individuals who are talented and just playing football. It's a group that's working together for a common goal. The big thing is the schedule. I don't think anyone's questioning, at least people who are serious about the college football, not just out there for trolling, but people aren't questioning necessarily the talent of the team. It's just the fact that the coaching has fallen short over the last 2 years. There's no excuses for losing to Vanderbilt in any situation. There is no excuse to losing to Arkansas at home last year. There is no excuse to losing to Missouri on a 4th and 17 the way that they did last year. There are a lot of games that went poorly, for a lot of different reasons between the depth, but a lot of it too was the scheme and just the overall organization of the team. But this year they made a lot of changes with the staff in general, especially with the analyst role. Analysts can now coach on the field actually, so that'll play a big role in them too. And overall, I mean, the team is just simply better than the last two teams. They have more guys, more talent. But as you said, it's just about taking advantage of that. I think that they are in a good spot to take advantage of that talent and use it efficiently. But you're also behind against some of these other teams. You have to play Texas on the road. You have to play Georgia. You have to play Florida State on the road. You have to play Tennessee on the road. These are teams that, sans Tennessee, except for 2 years ago, have been in the playoff conversation deep into the year. You also have to play Texas A&M. You also have to play UCF, who I don't know too much about UCF, but they seem better than they have been in recent years. So it's and then of course you open up against Miami. That's always a heated rivalry. Doesn't matter how good or bad the teams are. It's always going to be a close game. So it's a tough schedule, and I think one thing that Billy Napier has done is he's not made a big deal about the schedule. He's focused on improving his team and his guys, and they're also playing with a chip on their shoulder. The guys who are veterans of the team, they're mad about how the last few years have gone. Defensive lineman Tyreek Sapp said that I think it was he's out there to punish guys on opposing sidelines. Graham Mertz has come out and said that he's not there to prove the doubters wrong. He's there to prove each other right. So they're very confident in their ability to change the trajectory of this program. But you're playing a bunch of teams that are 2 years ahead of you when it comes to being playoff contenders. It's tough, but I think that Florida is also in a position to maybe surprise some people. I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to go 8-4 this year. But it just, everything has to go perfectly. They have to avoid the mistakes. There were so many critical mistakes late in games last year. You go to Utah, they had multiple penalties in the red zone. A bunch of special teams miscues cost them the game. You go to Arkansas, they had a chance to win the game at the end of the game. They had a boneheaded penalty that pushed the ball back 5 yards, and they missed the game-winning field goal. Arkansas wins it in overtime. They blow a 12-0 lead against Florida State at the end of the year. That would have put them in a bowl game. They had a 4th and 17 against Missouri that they just let right down the middle. Missouri kicked the game-winning field goal. So they had so many opportunities to win games last year. It wasn't like they were necessarily a bad team that just got blown out. They were a bad team that just didn't know how to finish games. Now they have that experience. They have the right guys in the right position, a good staff around them. So if all goes well, they could surprise some people and get to that 8-win mark. It's going to take a lot of just avoiding those critical, just plainly stupid mistakes that they've made the last few years. But I think that they could do it. I wouldn't be surprised if they go 6-6.
Yeah,
there's a range to work with because you just don't know exactly what you're always going to get out of this team. But I think that they go 8-4 or even 9-3 this year if everything goes according to plan. And there's also no guarantee that the teams on the schedule are going to be as good as they are now when they face them. You just don't know how the season's going to play out. So I think that there's reason to be optimistic in this team. From an outsider's point of view, I could definitely see why people would be pessimistic. And frankly, I don't blame them because You look at the 6-7 and 5-7 record. You look at just the amount of outgoing transfers. You look at the boneheaded mistakes. But I think that this is the year that they can have an opportunity to turn it around. And they need to, too, because Billy Napier has recruited some decent classes. He's brought some guys in. But this is also the recruiting class where guys are sitting and waiting to see what happens. Not many guys are chomping at the bit to commit to this class right now. They got a 5-star in wide receiver Vernell Brown the third. They just got a 4-star corner in Ben Hanks. But there's a lot of guys who are committed to other schools, including 2 guys who are committed to Miami in Hilton Stubbs and Bryce Fitzgerald, who, if Florida can beat Miami, and if they surprise some people, there's going to be recruits who are go, okay, maybe we should go to Florida. But if that doesn't happen and they struggle, you're going to look at recruits going, maybe this isn't the place that I need to go to. So there's a lot at stake this year. The schedule's difficult, but I think that this is a team that they are in a position to maybe shock some people. They just have to actually go out there and prove it. They haven't been able to prove it the last couple of years.
Yeah, and Kim, you read my mind there. I was about to ask you, how many wins is Florida going to have? What is your schedule prediction? But you covered it all in that, question. So, Kim, thank you so much. Looks like we're a bit over time, but time flies when you're talking college football. So, Kim, really appreciate you coming on. Shared some great insight on the UF football team. So, thank you so much, Kim. Good
Yeah.
to talk to you, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, and if you ever want to talk more Gator football, you know where to find me. You can also find my work on Twitter at CamParker25. It's the Sports Illustrated affiliate for Gators football, basketball, and baseball. Season's right around the corner. They just ended fall camp, so they'll begin game prep in the next couple days. We're pumping out some position outlooks and depth chart predictions, so just be on the lookout for that. But yeah, if you guys ever want to talk Gator football or anything, JJ, you know where to find me.
100%. And as you mentioned, go follow him on Twitter. I'll leave a link in the description down below where you can find Cam on Twitter and the Gators Illustrated. So, Cam, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right.
And yeah, thank you.